two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 offices in New York.
Oh, right.
And then because it worked so well in New York, the presidents and sales directors of the other offices in our other markets just mirrored it themselves. They were able, in New York, I knew the agents well enough that I could just select them because I knew the dynamics in the offices. But in, Palm Beach, the Hamptons, I didn't know all the offices as well. So, so the sales directors of those markets picked the same sorts of people and used them in the same way because it was so effective in New York.
Right. And you were the senior vice president here, right? So were you in charge of managing like this organization is like a national organization, correct? Like
Well, yeah. I mean, it's New York City, the Hamptons, Palm Beach, Miami. So.
Okay. Like multi-state, like multiple states, right?
Yeah, exactly. Multiple states.
Right. So like it's like nationally distributed. So so you were in charge, like you oversaw communications, like internal communications across all of these offices, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I understand. All
and
right.
also
And now,
public relations for all those offices as well.
Right. And the organization, we were just talking about like the internal communication strategies. So could you like you discussed a method that you used, like you designated influencers within the like you built relationships with influencers within each office, and like that helped diffuse information like in a better way. So other than this, you were saying okay. So other than this, I wanted to ask you, like you were saying that this was used to like diffuse information about like stuff that was happening at corporate level, right? So
yeah,
could you did you build any specific like internal communication strategy for like stuff like big organizational changes, transformations, hirings, firings, layoffs, and like promotions, demotions, stuff like that? So did you create any corporate like internal communication strategy for that, like for spreading that for?
Yeah, we one of the things that happened in the last 3 years was we launched an entire new platform for the agents to work on. So it was everything that they need: marketing, a listing system, accounting, like everything was brand new. And so we created this whole year-long campaign of how to, because it was so much information, it's like we were changing everything for them. And, people freak out over change. So one of the things that we did is we had to create a strategy on how to release all of those new systems so that it wasn't overwhelming. And so we stretched it out over 6 to 8 months, really. But we spent 3 months just preparing the agents for change, really just getting them starting with very small changes and letting them know that this was the beginning of big things to come, of like, wonderful new work environment. And so what we ended up doing is really just creating this, I mean, almost truly a year-long campaign of how to communicate all these changes and have it be exciting and feel like you're moving forward and it was a positive thing instead of something that was overwhelming.
Right. I understand. Okay. Other than this, let's see here. Did you do anything to build an employer brand here?
What do you mean?
An employer brand, like say that your organization is a wonderful place to work at.
We tried. What I did to try and build like a more positive internal culture is instituted once a month cocktail parties. it was an opportunity because the agents work in different offices, and
Uh-huh.
because they don't all work the same hours. It's being a real estate agent isn't really a 9 to 5 job. So
Okay.
even if you do come into the office, it's possible that there's people that you would never see. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, people were sometimes only seeing each other like at the annual holiday party or at our annual meeting, and
Okay.
no other time during the year. And so one of the things that we did to try and create more of a community and more of a company culture was to have once a month cocktail parties. And it brought together agents from, both new agents and our top most experienced agents, and people from different offices, um, from to a cocktail party that would happen once a month. And because it happened once a month, always at the same time, um, our Hamptons and Florida agents would often, if they were coming to New York, schedule it so that they could be there for that, so that
And like
they
the
would have the opportunity. They would have the
yeah.
opportunity to meet the agents that they don't often get a chance to see. Because I mean, the way that the real estate business works is, it's mostly agents doing business with agents. So
Right.
by bringing agents together, we actually did more business. Once
Oh.
I instituted those cocktail parties, which truthfully was really hard to get approved because it just seemed like paying for people to drink. I was able to show that, right? I was able to show that uh, the company did more business internally. Because what would
Right.
happen is you're having a cocktail with somebody, a glass of wine on the terrace, and you would be talking to somebody about, I have a buyer who wants to buy a house, and
Mhm.
I can't find anything. And they would be like, oh, well, you should go talk to this person because they're bringing something on. And so what would end up
Oh.
happening is every one of those cocktail parties, a deal got done. People found out in a faster way about a listing, a buyer, than they would have otherwise. And so the parties
Right.
actually paid for themselves. They,
Right.
and
Right.
in effect, they actually made the company money.
Oh, so these were like part, like these real estate agencies are like part of your, and these are like part of your company. They got together, they exchanged like opportunities that are available, and that like helped improve business.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And
That's
they exchanged it face to face. So somebody would say, you know, like, you know, I have, a friend, and they have, like sometimes real estate agents would have like somebody that they really didn't want to work with, but they felt obligated to work with them because, they sold a house to their mother, but they don't really want to work with them on like a cheap rental. So what they would do is, often they would be complaining about it, and then somebody would just say, well, I'll help them. Let me, I'll work with you and let me help
right.
you out so that we'll keep the business in the company. You'll still get some money, and I'll get to learn something and do some work. So it was
Oh,
everything from people giving referrals to people learning about off-market opportunities. Yeah, actually, it worked out really well. It was probably one of the dumbest things my boss did was to stop having those parties.
wait, why?
I know, it's crazy. Because I don't know. They just decided that they didn't. Truthfully, I think she decided that she didn't want to have to go to them, and so she canceled them. And I mean,
Oh
it's crazy. It's
Lord.
crazy because the cost of them every month was, I don't know, like $2,000. But
Yeah.
at every single one, we did a deal. Like something, we made way more money each month by
Okay.
getting the agents together and having them talk to each other. But then
Right.
she canceled them. So there you have
Oh,
it.
okay. So you just said that you made way more money. So and that you actually went to
I
the
wish I
leaders
could.
and that you, yeah, yeah. Go
I
ahead.
mean, I wish I could quantify it, but all I can say is that it definitely made money. I mean, I know of several transactions that may not have happened otherwise.
Okay. So like if I wanted to go with the ballpark figure, say six-figure annually, or seven-figure annually? Would that be all right?
I think that those cocktail parties
Hmm.
resulted in, yeah, I would say six figures.
Okay,
We
that's
did that.
good. That's actually
We did them over 3 years. Yeah.
okay. Right. All right. Uh, okay, we have gotten through this. Okay, yeah. By the way, could you wait a second? I need to consult my notes for just one bit.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Right. Hello.
Yep, I'm here.
Right. Like when I said building employer brand earlier, like you presented me with a very wonderful point here that I'm definitely going to include. But when I said building employer brands earlier, like I'll explain that to you. Like build a brand on as an employer of choice for top talent. So like it's essentially a strategy to attract top talent. So that's what I meant.
I see. I see what you mean.
Hmm.
Building. Let me think about this. The thing, because the audience was two groups, right? It was
Mhm.
the staff, the employees, and
Mhm.
then the real estate agents who are independent contractors.
Mhm.
So I will tell you that it was impossible to build a brand that the staff would want to come to work at, because most of our entry level positions pay terribly. So I mean, I didn't even try, truthfully,
Okay.
because
Okay.
anybody who was smart enough to go and interview to be an administrative assistant at any other firm would realize that Brown Harris Stevens paid substantially less.
Right.
But as building a brand that the real estate agents would want to come and work at, yes. I mean, that's definitely something that I worked very hard at.
Okay.
That was primarily my job, was to work towards building a brand that 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 the agents would, because there's so much competition,
Right. Right.
to get real estate agents.
Right.
And so,
And
and basically every part of my job involves that. Everything from being involved in that. We did a corporate rebranding, and it
yeah,
launched two and
we'll discuss that in later.
okay.
I understand that like every part of your job involved like building a good environment for like your agents and improving your like reputation in front improving your reputation in front of agents, like building a positive image in front of them, like building a good brand in front of them. So I understand that
Uh-huh.
bit. So we'll discuss the rebranding later. So
Okay.
shall we move on to the next thing?
I
Hello.
mean, I guess it's a tough. Hello.
Yeah, yeah, go
I
ahead.
guess it's a tough. It's tough to think about other things that I did. I mean, because everything was about trying to. I mean, everything that I did was about sort of making it clear through the way that our agents and our executives were interviewed by reporters,
Mhm.
how they presented themselves, the speeches I wrote for them, what kind of a company the firm was.
Okay.
So,
Right.
I mean, all of that was really about the brand.
Okay. So over here, there's also this thing about strengthening brand and like brand reputation through like media coverage, right? So
Right.
have you like you just told me that you were heavily involved with like talking to journalists, bloggers, and stuff, and people like that, like people in the
Uh-huh.
media industry, right? To like
Yep.
communicate, like yeah. So could you talk about like how like did you develop a corporate media strategy, and like how did you utilize like media coverage over here, and how did you utilize like media channels over here?
Oh, sure, sure. I mean, a lot of the media strategy was not only impacted by our corporate initiatives, but by the state of the real estate market. So, I mean, we couldn't come out strong saying, you know, we're the number one luxury real estate brokerage in New York City when the luxury real estate market isn't selling well, right? So it was a finding that fine balance of um, being a company that clearly educated the consumer, so that when the consumer wanted to look for an agent, they would think of Brown Harris Stevens first, because they knew that that from, you know, reading interviews and seeing our agents on TV, they would know that, you know, our agents were effectively, you know, the smartest, the most knowledgeable, had the most experience.
Right. So, like this was your overall direction in which you took the corporate media strategy, right? So you essentially
Yeah,
developed the corporate media strategy, right? You were essentially the one
yeah,
doing this corporate media strategy stuff. Okay.
yes, yeah.
So, um, did you ever get the opportunity to like proactively pitch strategic news to like media channels?
All day, every day,
Oh,
all the time.
interesting. All right. Okay.
Yeah, I
Uh,
pitch stories to reporters and journalists many times a day. I couldn't even tell you how many.
okay.
Some days it was only 4 or 5. Some days I would pitch as many as 20 or 30 stories.
Oh, all right. Okay. And what about like stuff like awards and conferences? So, like, have you
Yeah,
ever?
I was involved in submitting the company and some of our agents for industry awards. And also, um, I worked towards getting the executives and the agents on industry panels, both nationally and internationally.
Okay, all right. And what about conferences? Did you do anything with regards to that? Like, help them, improve participation, like
Sure.
proactively participate? Yeah, go ahead. Do tell.
Yeah,
But-
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the I- the CEO, the president, our top agents, we're on panels all the time. Conferences, industry panels, both locally and nationally and internationally. And I would work with whoever was on the panel to help craft what they wanted to say, how they wanted to present themselves, everything from what to wear to, you know, their hair and makeup, to talking to them about working with them on content, how to answer
Right.
certain questions if we got the questions in advance. And if they didn't get the questions in advance, we'd work on talking points that would present the agent or the executive and the firm in a good light. And even their market, depending on what it was, because sometimes they were in front of an international audience who maybe didn't know about, say, the Miami market or the Palm Beach market.
Right. So, is there any like significant names that you would like to mention, like of the awards that you helped the company achieve, or like the conferences that you helped them like go to, like that you promote, like encourage them to participate in? So, is there anything like that?
They're boring real estate conferences. I'd just be worried that that because I'm not sure I want to stay in the real estate industry
Oh,
or primarily focused in the real estate industry, that I wouldn't want to name drop something that was so specifically real estate. You know what I
oh,
mean?
I understand. You don't want to stay in the real estate industry, right? I thought like
I
one
mean,
of your jobs was like related to real estate, like it required real estate
yeah.
experience. So I thought, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, well,
I
yeah, and I think, yeah,
okay, go ahead. You
no,
think what?
I think that that I'd rather not just list them because they're truthfully, I mean, honestly, they're a little boring and they're also not very impressive if you're not a real estate person.
Okay, I understand. I understand. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, this is the question that I have been waiting to ask since the beginning of this call.
Okay.
Right. Let's move to crisis communication. What did you do
Oh,
in crisis communication? Is there anything
oh man.
any interesting stories in crisis communication? Looked at crisis communication.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about crisis communication in real estate that's kind of crazy that you don't think about is people in New York City jump off buildings and kill themselves.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Uh-huh.
Brown Harris, I know, right? It's terrible. Brown Harris Stevens has a residential management division, and they
Mm-hmm.
manage, I don't know, like whatever, a couple hundred buildings. And
Mm-hmm.
every year, people jumped off of them, and so um, I would have to work with the people, the staff in the building, the doorman, the head of that division, to um, to make sure that we can help the building, because usually the building will at some point make a comment. So we work with the building to make a statement. We would make sure that the people on the street, so if a reporter shows up at the door, we would make sure that the staff in the building knew how to respond, knew what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happened with, there was like a robbery, if there was um, any other terrible thing that happened.
Right, right, right.
And
And
and then the other part of my job is and it's a different kind of crisis communications, which is often our agents were involved in real estate sales that were involved people who were very high profile, and we were not allowed. We had a non-disclosure, and so we were
Mhm.
not allowed to talk about it to reporters or to anybody.
Okay.
And so one of my jobs was to make sure that the agents really understood that everybody on the executive team understood that, so that they didn't accidentally like go on a panel discussion and talk about
Okay.
how Brown Harris Stevens sold Jeff Bezos $150 million in real estate.
All
I
right,
would
I
make
understand.
sure, yeah, I would make sure that they would understand how they could refer to it without
Okay.
breaking the rules of the non-disclosure.
Right, right, right. And is there okay? Like I'm rather embarrassed to ask this, but still, I really want to ask this. But is there ever been an instance where, like, the company itself, like the company's reputation was at stake here? Like, not the properties that you were selling, like on the people who were managing the company or something like that. Like, the company's own reputation was at stake on a human level. So, did you help manage any crisis like those?
Um, that's probably why they let me go. Oh,
Oh,
no, we have a new CEO, and she doesn't
okay.
present herself very well. And the reason that she decided she needed to replace me, I believe the reason she decided to replace me is I had been trying to get her to get some media training so that she presented herself better, and in interviews, because the things
Mhm.
she said were truthfully kind of shocking. And
Oh, right,
so
right, right.
I don't know. I don't know how we talk about that. Maybe we just don't. If
No, we don't
anybody
talk
who
about
knows,
that. It's just it's just I'm interested to know about that.
yeah, no, it's interesting. But I mean,
Yeah.
anybody who knows the New York real estate industry very well,
Uh-huh.
knows her and has read these things and understands my predicament and is probably glad that I'm not there anymore because I don't have to deal with it.
They'll probably be sympathetic to your cause. Oh, good lord.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
That's
I guess
mm,
in terms of when the company comes under scrutiny or did come
mhm,
under scrutiny
mhm,
for the things that it did, um,
mhm.
it depended on. I mean, there were some instances, but they're all fairly small. But it was very much a I guess I would say it was more of a trying to think of. I mean, they're all such weird because it's real estate. They're all such weird experiences. Um, Seriously,
Okay.
they're very bizarre. Like there was an instance of a bird that lived on a building that caused a lot of drama, and I am not kidding. It's no, like literally, like it was a building that had a bunch of celebrities in it, and the celebrities wanted to get rid of the bird, and then everybody in New York was like, I mean, the bird had a fan club. I mean, it was totally bizarre.
Oh, good
But
lord, this sounds interesting.
no, yeah. I mean, New York, right? You can't believe it. So it's hard to talk about that in terms of crisis communications. I feel like that's something that I don't know how to put on my resume, but something I know how to speak to it in an interview. But
Right, right,
I
right.
don't know how we. I think maybe on the resume you just make mention of it, and if somebody's interested, they'll ask me about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So we'll
Or
mention it
or
in like we won't go into specifics. Okay, we won't narrate events over here. What we're going to do in the resume is say that you did handle these kinds of crises. Okay, so for example,
okay,
managed crises regarding public reputation, right? So something along
yeah,
those lines,
perfect,
right? And in the
yeah,
resume, they'll ask like, how did you do that? And you can like explain that this is how I did that, right? So you mitigated the effects
right,
of those, and right, okay, all right.
okay.
Oh, this was the most interesting interesting thing I heard about. This entire call. Oh god. Oh god.
Here
Birds
you thought we
having
were
a
gonna just birds
uh,
having fan clubs, exactly.
birds having fan clubs. Oh, okay. Right. Let's move on to how you what's this called? Develop and execute. Okay, we've talked about like you developing and executing communication strategies in great detail. Is there any way that you ensure that okay, I believe you also discussed that sorry, I believe you also ensured that how you discussed that these long term sorry, that